All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We're back. It's been a minute, hasn't it? I'm going to go over that. Sorry, if my eyes wind up looking over there, um, my setup's a little bit weird at the moment. I'm going to be working on fixing that in the near future. Let me go over the agenda for today, and then we will get into the specifics of uh, what we're doing, what's been going on. So, the agenda is a little bit busy this week. We're going to review two UFC events because this didn't get up and running until after UFC 324 and UFC 325. So we're going to review both of those. Then we're going to preview UFC Fight Night. I think it's 266, which is just how I'm going to refer to those from now on. It makes life easier. Then like UFC Fight Night on Paramount Plus one, or the city designations that the UFC uses because they're kind of useless for the most part. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing going forward. And then some news over the last week that's been kind of the last couple of weeks that's been missed. Some of this is going to get tied into talking about UFC 324 because the UFC revealed a lot of stuff related to that. There's some stuff that came out of it that we now know a little bit more about. So that's kind of what's going on there. But as for the what happened, what kind of how we got where we are at the moment, why it took so long to get back. This isn't a deep saga, but not super complicated. The higher ups sent me a message that the audio only portion of this program was not something they were going to continue supporting, but the YouTube channel's been up for a while. So if I wanted to keep doing this is the format it would be in. I could either do send in audio only recording. I could upload audio only recordings rather, with a picture in the middle. Jack Slack does it that way. I could record video and then upload it, or I could just go live. Going live is usually the easiest thing, I think. So I decided that's what I was going to do. Took a little bit longer than you'd like to get a few of the things sorted out. And frankly, this is still a little bit of a learning process for me. I've been live on camera for a few years at this point over on my other podcast, Damn You Hollywood, and any other time I sub in on some of the other stuff over there. So I don't have a problem with you guys seeing me. Not a big deal. But getting set up, uh, again, there's just a few little things that had to be worked out, minor stuff behind the scenes that no one cares about. So that's where we are with it. Took a while, meant I couldn't get my preview for 324 up or my preview for 325. I got the last of this got sorted basically yesterday, more Friday. I think it was Friday. It really got sorted. And I wasn't going to do something really, really short on Friday because I was busy with other stuff. I had SmackDown coming up, and then I had to get everything ready for 325, which I do the night before because I'm a professional, sort of. And it wound up being a little bit more complicated than I think everyone would have liked, but here we are. So all's well that ends well, as we say. We should be back to being regular weekly here, YouTube exclusive, so you get video. I'm going to be experimenting a little bit with this as we go on. Right now, because I didn't have time to get anything set up for a slightly more fancy production, this is literally just my webcam and me talking to it, which is normally what I do. But if I'm going to be video as well as instead of just audio, I mean, I wouldn't actually talk to the webcam before because I didn't need to record video, but you get the point. So I'm going to be playing around with some other stuff a little bit later this week. But again, this kind of came together and this is what we got. So this is what we're doing at the moment. I'm not as center as I thought I would be. There we go. Yeah, that should be over there. I'm not going to go into everything. So this is going to be YouTube only, basically for the foreseeable future. I may try once I get a few other things sorted out. It may also stream to my personal Facebook account or something like that. But for the most part, this is it. So if you do, I not have a. I will look around. Again, there's a bunch of stuff I don't want to play around with right now. So that's the deal. I'm gonna try to do this probably around this same time on Sunday, so that's 9 where I am, so 11 p.m. Eastern. I'm open to changing that. If other time period is better for anyone who wants to watch live, uh, hit me up either in the comments down here, which I will check, or if you happen to know me personally, you can find me on X at Winfrey MMA, or if you happen to have any other personal contact info with me, let me know. I am very willing to mess around with this a little bit. So we'll see. I used to record really late because it made life easier for everyone else, and I was doing audio only, so it wasn't a big deal to wait. But again, there's going to be some growing pains a little bit as this gets moved into this particular phase of what it's going to look like. So that's where we are. I'm really actually a little bit annoyed about that. Hang on. Do I not have? I don't think I actually do have that. Huh. All right, give me just a sec. And I will try and share. There we go. Okay. Let me do this real fast. Sorry about this, guys. Again, this is one of the things we're going to get ironed out later. And also, if you're listening to this after the fact, I will try to have a pinned comment or in the description will be timestamps for all of us. So if you want to just look at that stuff, then please, by all means, you can skip around if you're listening after the fact. But if you're listening live, that's going to be, as always, very, very appreciated. So we're just going to see how this goes for a while until things get really, really smoothed out. Okay. That looks all right. Yep, that's good. And why did some of these things become so unintuitive? Ugh. Some of this is just me and my problems. Alrighty. That should be most of the technical stuff out of the way for the most part. Alrighty, let's get into this proper. There's this doohickey, which I need for that. All right. So that's kind of the lay of the land going forward. I'm going to see how things work out. Part of me going live here is because I find this easier than recording a video and waiting for it to upload and all that fun stuff. So this is where we are. If anyone wants to listen live, happy. And if anyone wants to listen after the fact, doubly happy. If you are going to try and listen after the fact, I don't know if this is going to be re-uploaded into the video section. So if you look at the 411 YouTube channel, you might have to go to the live tab, live subcategory, because I don't know if it's going to get back up on the other end. But again, stuff we're going to be figuring out. So I thank you all. I apologize. I really wanted this to be, back and smooth, but life intervened, as it also often does. So on the plus side, now, if you wish to direct your ad hominem attacks at my personnel stuff, by all means, you can. So that's where we are with that. All right. With that out of the way, let's jump into there we go. UFC 324, which I have to review well after the fact, but again, next week we should be actually next week's going to be a little bit weird too. Not super weird, but next week is just the Super Bowl here. We'll save that for the end. We'll save that for the end. At a bare minimum, within the next 3 weeks, everything's gonna be smooth, hopefully. Certainly smoother. All right. Anywho. So for UFC 324, this was the UFC's debut on Paramount Plus. You got the full experience with 324. You had a fight fallout due to suspicious betting. That was the Alexander Hernandez and Michael Johnson fight. Doesn't look like anyone was planning on throwing the fight, but the rumor mill currently is that Hernandez had some kind of an injury that he was going to fight through. I mean, this is not too far removed from when they let that, I forget the guy's name, but let that guy fight with a visibly broken hand. And so that seems to be the kind of the case there. And the UFC just pulled it, which is, if you're going to be this far in bed with gambling, that's how you should do it. That's just what it's going to be. The line moved a fair bit. So, not that there wasn't value to be had on Michael Johnson as the underdog in that fight. I think there was. But lines moving a lot is a lot of disproportionate money coming in, is kind of what affects that. So they pulled that. We had one fighter pass out, walking off the scale after making weight, Cameron Smotherman. Gnarly little fall from him, almost a full-on flare flop. So that fight got canceled appropriately. Then we had two fighters miss weight. Davison Figueiredo missed weight. Alex Perez missed weight. Perez missing weight actually made my change the pick to him. So, and then you had a Josh Hokett promo, which no one liked. Well, I shouldn't say no one liked, but yeah, this one had a little bit of everything, all the good, bad, and otherwise that the sport offers. So Paramount got the full gamut for that one. All right, a couple of other things before I get into the fights in particular. It goes as follows. The UFC announced, Dana got asked about this. Hey, what's the new bonus structure going to look like? Because we haven't heard anything. And he said, I don't know. Then, like the next day or later that day, he announced to a major, bigger news outlet the new bonus structure. So, oy vey. It's going to go as follows. The performance, the night bonuses, so performances of the night and fight of the night, are now set at $100,000, which you might think, yay, that's double what it used to be. Get to that in a second. And they've added what is a standard finish bonus. If you get a finish, you get an extra $25,000. That's a thing that I and a lot of other people, several before me, have been advocating for, is if you want to incentivize finishes in action, a straight finish bonus is better than the way they had been doing it. So that's a good step. The 100,000 instead of 50,000. Again, I'm sure a bunch of people were happy. Bear in mind that if you track inflation, this actually puts them comparable to the bonuses they were paying in like 07. I think it was 07 or 09. Between 07 and 09, like they actually did bump up the bonuses from 50K to 75K. And the reality is that 75K in, like, again, 09, give or take, translates to about $110,000 in 2026. So they're still kind of technically lagging behind inflation from where they used to be 15 years ago. That's just where we are, folks. I don't know what to tell you. There's also been some people who did math on this. If you look at like the average number of finishes per year, the UFC might wind up paying out a little bit less in real dollars. Even if they pay out more in real dollars, I guarantee you they're paying out a much smaller percentage of what they get of their revenue than they used to. Again, when they announced this deal, I read some math that other people had done, I think John S. Nash, among others, but like the numbers the UFC could increase by in terms of real dollars and actually shrink the percentage of rev share. So yeah, a lot of fighters are talking about, having to redo contracts because a lot of them still have pay-per-view points, and pay-per-view for the major markets is dead. Canada still has pay-per-view. Another reason to feel sorry for the Canadians. I appreciate you guys, but I'm sorry that sucks to be you. It really does. I don't feel good saying that. There's a few other places where it gets a little bit dicey, but for the most part, the largest driver of pay-per-view sales has always been the United States. That's just how it is. And with that being kind of a dead market now for the UFC, with the way Paramount Plus deal is, a lot of fighters are like, well, there's a lot of money that we're not getting anymore. So, yeah. I mean, Conor McGregor came out and said, so this voids my UFC contract, which it doesn't. You can make a legalistic argument that it materially now requires the UFC to renegotiate a little bit with you, but it does not outright void it sort of on its face. So there's that. But yeah, that's not really a I'm not here to kill it. I'm really not. The bonuses have been lagging for a real long time, as I mentioned. Technically, they're still lagging, but $100,000 is a lot of money, especially to more junior fighters. And I don't mean junior in terms of age. I mean in terms of UFC experience. And frankly, a $25,000 finish bonus for a lot of the guys, dude. You come in on a 10 and 10, 12 and 12 contract. Finishing is like can more than double your total take home. So that's not nothing. Rather, it was more. But what are you gonna do? If you're me, you just talk about it on occasion and do what you can do. So that's where we are with that. I'll save talking about the numbers until after we talk about the fights now, because that was stuff that we knew going into it. Coming out of it. So first of all, prediction wise, how did I do? I went 11-1, and boy was I sweating that final fight. I was perfect up through the main event. I picked Patty in the main event. I went back and forth on that one most of the week. I settled on Patty. Never been happier for Gagey to win. Mostly, not just because I love Gagey, but if I went 12-0 and I didn't get my picks on air beforehand in any capacity, I would have felt like the world's biggest putz. So kind of wiped my brow a little bit. There were a couple of underdogs too that I landed on that one. So which of the dogs did I? Okay, well, let's run through a couple of this. Davison Figueiredo missing weight didn't change my opinion. Umar's just a bad matchup for him. Perez missing weight did change my opinion. I had been leaning Johnson, but Perez missing weight, it's the kind of thing that could sway things in his favor. And Charles Johnson is kind of the Michael Johnson of flyweight. When he's on, he's good, but he's a little bit too patchy to be reliable. So I feel okay settling on that. What other underdogs did I pick? Who was a dog? Miller was a favorite. I'm trying to do some of this from memory, guys, so I apologize. Miller was a favorite. Hokett was a favorite. Krylov was a dog. I remember why I picked Krylov, too. That was my last chance with Krylov. I looked at that and I went, logically this should be Bukowskis, but I don't like him all that much. And yeah, Krylov feels washed, but I'm gonna give Krylov, like, this was my last time. Like, if he lost this fight, I would legitimately never pick him again. And I don't mind giving guys that shot. So that was kind of my last hurrah with Krylov. He got it done, which made me happy. Gautier was a big favorite. Umar was a big favorite. I don't remember the favorite. I think Silva was the favorite over Allen. I think Silva was the favorite. Waldo was a favorite. And O'Malley was a favorite. So it again, I went pretty well, but I had solid logic. And obviously, Patty was a favorite, and I picked him, but he lost. So what are you going to do? So that's kind of how we arrived there. 11-1, solid start. 325, not as good. Not terrible, but not as good. So as for the fights from UFC 324, let's get into it. Main event for the interim lightweight title, Justin Gaethje defeats Paddy Pimblett via unanimous decision. 49-46 twice and a 48-47. Man, very happy to be wrong in my prediction on this one. I like Justin Gaethje. So watching him batter Paddy Pimblett for 5 rounds was pretty great. I think I was 5-0 for Gaethje. I might have given Paddy the third. I think the third is the one that everyone kind of universally thinks he won, and then you could argue the fifth. How did this go? Um, I think a lot of us who were picking Patty expected a few things. One, we expected that Gagey would give him back exposure, which is kind of a big deal. And two, that Patty would bring more of a commitment to forward pressure. Neither of these guys is any good fighting off the back foot. They both have to go forward to make their games work. And Gagey was just the one who did that. He backed Patty up to the cage. Patty's defensive movement, not great. He got a little bit back on track in the third. I want to give Patty some credit for this. The third round is the only one where he did pretty decent defensive movement in terms of not getting backed all the way to the fence. He used kicks okay in that round, but one of the other things, Gagey, I think threw very few kicks at all because he wasn't going to try and give Patty an easy takedown, which makes sense. The clinch, Gagey was very well prepared for the clinch. Here's the other thing about this. Jack Slack brought this up, and I hadn't necessarily connected these dots, so I'm cribbing from him pretty liberally here. But there's a lot, if you want to understand like an analog to Paddy Pimblett in terms of like just fight style, you want to look at like Kazushi Sakuraba. And Sakuraba is pretty great in a lot of respects, but he took a ton of damage. And part of that was because his takedown game was largely predicated on single legs, and especially fighting in Pride when he could get his head stuffed and then kneed in the head repeatedly because Pride allowed that. I mean, I think it was Ricardo Arona who like changed his face. It was kind of freaky if you've never seen that. And Patty got stuck doing a lot of that. He does a lot of like upper body trips. Again, like there's a lot of Sakuraba in his game. And I hadn't realized that quite as much as others. And Gagey was very ready for that. He got his he was able to drop Patty in I think several of the rounds. There was this revived the eye poke discussion, and one of them was a poke. There was a break for it, and it was what it was. The second one is the one that I'm going to push back on just a little bit. This is the one from I think it's the fourth round, where it starts as the reason I'm going to push back on this is it starts as a legal blow, connects as a legal blow, and then it's basically Gagey punching Pimblett in the eye. Basically. So what happens is left hand. I hate that that's mirrored. So this is my left hand. Gagey throws a jab. Comes out like this. He is aiming at Patty's face. Kind of glances. So he's punching at this eye. It kind of glances around here. And it makes contact kind of with this part and then with his thumb. And then his thumb right about here gets caught around this spot. Right in there. And his thumb gets pried out of the fist and goes forward across this spot of the eye. If all you do is see this in Patty's eye, yes, that looks terrible, looks like a bad eye poke. That's not how we got there. And because it's not how we got there, I can't say that I don't know that that's illegal. Like this is actually a weird bit of minutia around the rules I'd have to look up or ask about. Because if you kick someone in the face and your toe goes in their eye, that's legal. You can strike the eyes with legal weapons. That's perfectly fine. In fact, that happened, was it Kat Zingano? That I feel like it was Megan Anderson, who like kicked at Kat Zingano's head and didn't really land a kick, but her toes went into the eye. And Zingano, suddenly couldn't defend herself. Anderson followed up, got a stoppage. Now, we look at that a little bit differently in no small part because you have less manual dexterity with your toes than you do with your fingers. That's understandable in some respects, but when you make contact with a legal blow and then over the course of a legal blow being executed, things get weird. I don't quite know how we adjudicate that. Like, I'm not entirely. Again, the closest analog is actually the head kick thing. So I don't know. I was okay. I was more okay with that one. I was okay with that one. Like, if you wanted to argue that there should have been a point taken from the first eye poke because we're all just sick of eye pokes, I can live with that argument. But arguing that that second one was that is just categorically punching someone like this, and then the knuckle of your thumb catching around here and kind of getting forced open because you've got a lot of force going this way, and a object here that kind of goes pulls it out. That's just different to me than the first one where Gagey was kind of pawing like this on the face. Pawing like this on the face, yeah, that's not good. So if you want to argue that that one should have merited a point deduction, again, because we're all kind of just sick of eye pokes, I can live with that. But that other one, I don't know. It didn't read like a foul to me, but I'd have to look real deep into that, and I'm not sure what that winds up looking like. So I don't know. Beyond that, really solid overall performance from Gagey. Good clinch work. He had some nice front headlock works. He snapped Pimblett down a couple of times with that, and then was landing some like punches, some sort of coming in from the side punches, uppercuts almost to the head on the ground because he wasn't going to give Pimblett a whole lot of space. And you could see like he's dying for the universal or the pride rules where you can knee the head of a downed opponent from there because he could have done some damage. Was there anything else specifically? So this is one of the reasons I like to do this every week because my memory doesn't fade about some of the details. The fourth round, again, I want to give Pimblett credit for the third because he got battered the first two, figures a few things out in the second or in the third rather, and that's actually a good round for him. Pimblett's toughness overall, I think, deserves a lot of credit. And again, the third round, he just couldn't sustain what he did in the third for any other round. The fourth round is the only round that kind of gave me Gagey Ferguson vibes. The first two, pretty clear Gagey rounds. Third round, again, you could go either way. Fourth is the one that made me go, man, like, ugh. Like, Pimblett got dropped and hurt in some of the other rounds. In fact, Gagey got some pretty nice ground and pound off. I think it was the end of the third. So it's not like Paddy wasn't getting beaten up before that, but in that fourth round, that's when I got the Ferguson vibes. Now, only one round of that, so I'm not saying that I don't think Paddy has been ruined the same way Ferguson was by that fight. In no small part because only one round gave me that instead of like round after round after round. But I don't think it's unfair to say that Gagey might have taken a couple of fights off of Pimblett's career with that. I mean, here's the other thing about why I think I got this prediction wrong ultimately. Pimblett had made a handful of advancements in his overall game since coming to the UFC. I think they were somewhat overstated in no small part based on the level of opposition he was facing. Doesn't mean they weren't real, but they had an outsized effect on his outcomes without necessarily having the same big effect on his overall game. I mean, his takedowns are not good, guys. I don't think he took Chandler down. He hurt him he like knocked him down with a knee strike, which was a good one, mind you. I mean, he landed on Gagey a fair amount here. It needs to be said. Like, the problem is he doesn't seem to have a lot of power, which is not a death sentence, but is a real hurdle you have to overcome. His defense is still not great. I mean, if Gagey was landing on him like this, what do you think Ilya Topuria would have done? I mean, Topuria might have, really badly hurt him. And I said this before about Patty. I'm going to reiterate it. Like, 'cause he added a few wrinkles since I've levied this criticism. So it needs to be tempered a bit, but I think it's still true. He got to the UFC almost at 30 years of age with north of 20 fights. You kind of just are who you are when you reach that point in your career. Almost no one reinvents themselves at that point. You can change your tools a little bit. I mean, there's a famous line from the Muhammad Ali biopic starring Will Smith when he's talking with Angelo Dundee, who I think this draws from real life. This is like, I think it's after the loss to Joe Frazier. And Ali says, like, do I still have the tools? And if you know the actual history of like where Ali was physically at this point, this is after his. Ali has a weird point of delineation in his career. Early in his career, he is all speed, all athleticism. Big guy, fleet of foot, quick hands, good punching power. Then there's the long break when he's in his legal battle with over the draft and all that stuff. And after that, he has a couple of fights where he tries to fight like he used to, and it doesn't quite work, including the Joe Frazier loss and even some fights that he wins that just it's not the same. And Dundee tells him, you've got, I think it's Angelo Dundee at least, you've still got the tools to be the champion, but they're different. Post break, post that layoff, Muhammad Ali becomes like a master of the clinch. You don't think about him that way, but if you watch those fights, that's where he does a lot of his best work, the boxing clinch. So you get guys who can do stuff adjacent to that. I mean, Gagey's a good example. After those two losses in the UFC, he adjusted his style. Less wild berserker and a bit more measured power counterpunching, still with a general high pace and an emphasis on violence, but looks a little bit different. But those are rare. Like, you don't get people that do that very often, and Patty added a couple of wrinkles, and I give him credit for that. That's not easy to do either. His kicking game came up a bit. And he added ground and pound in a way that he hadn't done a lot of before. That's not nothing. It really isn't. But at this point with him, he's not going to develop a lights out double leg. He's just not, guys. He's not going to go through these deep wrestling chains. His takedown game is largely, trying to create a little bit of a scramble and off balancing in the clinch or the Sakuraba single leg. Try and develop from there. And if you can get a read on that, he struggles. He doesn't have the punching power to be a real threat. And his defense is a problem. So I'm not saying there's no cause to still have general optimism around Paddy Pimblett. You can still be somewhat optimistic. You can still think he's going to win fights. He probably is. But I don't. This kind of reiterated some of the previous criticisms that had been levied at him. And I think it also did somewhat lay bare the preferential matchmaking that he got, which isn't necessarily the end of the world. Like, star building requires a degree of career management. But you also can't lie about it when it happens. And I think it definitely happened with him. So, as for what's next, Gagey wants to fight with Ilya. We don't know when that might happen because Ilya's still tied up. Yeah, lightweight's a mess. I mean, guys, I love Gagey. Most exciting fighter, maybe in MMA history. It's a real short list. It's like him and Vanderlei Silva. For there was a period of time when Shogun would be in that conversation. Like there's people we can throw there, but Gagey is one of the most exciting violent fighters the sport's ever produced. I love watching his fights. They bring me joy in this space. He is not the rightful number one contender. He's not the second best lightweight in the world. There's a real argument that he is not the fourth best lightweight in the world. You got Ilya as champion, Armin as number one contender, Max, who flatlined Gagey, and Oliveira, who beat Gagey, who finished him in two. All those guys are ahead of him, all of them. Yet he's got the interim belt, so he's going to leapfrog that line. Lightweight is just kind of a mess. I mean, we've still got to wait for what happens with Max and Oliveira, and there's some other complicating factors, but they've got to sort that out, man. I mean, you had Armin Saryukian saying like, well, maybe I'll go to 145 and fight for the belt. Minor note about that. I don't know that he can make 145, but it's not impossible. If he does and the UFC grants him a title shot, why wouldn't you just do if you don't think that Armin Saryukian is reliable to fight for a title, which is sort of what's going the UFC argument here is Dana's pissed at him for whatever reason, some of which is valid, I think, some of which isn't. And why would you then decide that this guy, who you're not sure is reliable at 155, is a reliable title challenger 10 pounds lighter in a division that has at least two deserving contenders already? What does that say about your decision-making process? Frankly, at that point, it just sounds like you're protecting Ilya. Like, nah, we don't want him to fight Ilya. You can go fight Volk. More on Volk later. No, we have full confidence in Armin and the PI saying he can make 145 after he left you hanging kind of at lightweight. He's more reliable at featherweight for an immediate title shot? What are you doing? What's going on there? Seriously. Ugh. Anyway, so lightweight's a bit of a mess. Patty, he should probably fight like Benoit Saint-Denis. More on BSD in a minute. Co-main event. Because this fight, other thing about this card, it also lost the fight between Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes when Kayla Harrison needed neck surgery. That seems to have gone well. Hope she recovers quickly. But it was another kind of knock on this card was we lost that fight, which was the most important female fight of all time after, a few weeks earlier, the most important female fight of all time between Shevchenko and Zhang. They're just throwing that tagline around. They've used it so much that it's lost all meaning. It's been diluted with overuse. Anyway, so Sean O'Malley defeats Song Yadong via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. O'Malley didn't really get going until the third round. Like he could have lost this fight. You could have given Song 1 and 2. Third round was pretty standard O'Malley stuff. They're gonna probably try and rush him to a rematch with Piotr Yan. I don't know. Song needs a new team. I don't say that lightly. And I know I've got some antipathy for Team Alpha Male, but I mean this in all sincerity. If you took the stereotypical understanding of a Team Alpha Male fighter, it's actually it's not Uriah Faber. Hasn't been for a while. It's kind of Song. He's either got a 3-2, left hook, right hand, or a 2-3, right hand, left hook, an okay double leg, and that's it. Like, this is the meme about them, is that's all they are. And then Song, and somehow, not Danny Castillo, not Chad Mendez, not Uriah Faber. I mean, they all do to one degree or another, but somehow they just kind of turned Song Yadong into the most generic fighter that team could produce. Like, if he's ever going to go anywhere, like, he needs a new ideas, and they don't have it there. Waldo Cortez Acosta defeated Derek Lewis via TKO 3:14 of the second. This fight sucked. Derek Lewis is 40 north of, missing punches left and right, going out of position. Waldo just kind of avoided one and then binked him. I mean, he just kind of poked him. When Lewis was off balance, Lewis fell over and was like, man, I don't want to get up. So Waldo got on top, and Derek Lewis is like, fine, let's hang out here. And I'll give Cortez Acosta credit for the following. This is a real thing you can do if you want to mess with somebody, especially when you're sparring. Don't do this when you're sparring and you're not like both okay with this. But a real thing you can do is lull someone into, we're doing this. Yeah, we're doing this. Yeah, got you a little bit. Yeah, got you a little bit. And then in a real fight, you get them into that mindset and then go, yeah, we're doing this. And then bam, suddenly like, no, we're going. Like, this is real. And Waldo's doing the kind of play around thing for a long time, gets on top there, and then just starts, you know what? I'm going to elbow the crap out of you. And he's lulled Lewis into a bad spot, kind of with Lewis thinking, we're sort of going, half speed. Like, I may be trying to knock you out, but, you're not hitting me as hard as you can. You lull someone into thinking about what you're doing and then up the intensity. Now, again, don't do this when you're sparring. If you're just kind of like with some people, like, because that's not cool to just up to hard sparring from light stuff. But you can do this to people and it works. So Waldo wants to fight Curtis Blades. I think that's a reasonable call out. Derek Lewis is washed. Natalia Silva defeated Rose Namajunas via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Rose is just cooked at this point. Her separation from Trevor Whitman did not do her many favors. I don't think flyweight was ever the best weight class for her because, in no small part, because at strawweight, she actually had some decent pop for the weight class. Like, she actually had fairly heavy hands. She doesn't have that power. She doesn't really have that same power differential at 125. And this is another thing about power that gets sort of misunderstood. It's not just how hard you can hit, it's how hard you can hit relative to what the people around you can take. And she had enough firepower at 115 to hurt the other people at 115. At 125, she does not have the firepower to reliably hurt the people at 125. So I don't know what we're doing with her. She's complained about eye pokes and had to get surgery. I don't know how many of that was pokes and how much of that was just getting hit, but who knows. Natalia Silva is clearly the next contender, the most deserving contender. And she and Valentina Shevchenko can key eye at each other for 25 minutes while Val wrestles her way to another title defense. At featherweight, Gian Silva defeated Arnold Allen via unanimous decision, 229-28 and a 30-27. Slow start from Silva, but I want to give him some credit. He handled the calf kicks okay, which is one of Allen's better weapons. He started finding better delivery systems for his power, and he stopped being stupid once he got someone hurt. This is what got him into... Dude, that Diego Lopez fight, he loses the first round. Second round, he is beating the crap out of Lopez. Like, Lopez is there and throwing back at him because, Lopez has a lot of dog in him, to use that euphemism. But Silva's getting the better of that because he hits harder. And then he just gets overexcited and goes into that spinning elbow because he'd shown that same spinning elbow to Lopez several times in a row. Anyway, got a lot calmer. Still had the meme moment at the end when he kind of knocks Allen down. Allen goes to turtle, and then he just kind of hops on it. Doesn't stomp him, doesn't jump on him, but climbs onto his back and then jumps off of it. John Silva's weird. But really, really good win for him. I was back and forth on that fight for a while, but the layoff for Allen was kind of my determining factor. Arnold Allen is a very good technician, but his offense is just, it's not, there's not enough horsepower there. So that was your main card on the prelim. So I got to go faster through this. Umar Nurmagomedov defeated Davison Figueiredo via unanimous decision, 30-27. Lackluster fight for the most part. In a spot where Umar could have made a real case for being the next title contender, he underdelivered. And Figueiredo missed weight and looked like crap. Ateba Gautier defeated Andre Pelayev when it was all said and done via unanimous decision, 229-28 and a 30-27. But this exposed a little bit still how green Gautier is. I wound up talking about this fight with one of my brothers because Pelayev was southpaw and Gautier is orthodox. And if you watch this fight, Gautier enters every exchange the same way. He always surrenders outside foot position. He never follows with a left hook. And if you're fighting open stances, again, like if I'm here and you're here, and if I'm here and you're, if I'm orthodox here and you're southpaw, there's that big open space here. It means if all you're doing is throwing your power hand, it's coming this way at me. And if you don't have your foot on the outside of my foot, one, you don't have a straight punching lane, but two, I can easily just circle this way and lean and avoid that. It's going to fall shorter. It's only going to catch like shoulder or glove. Over and over and over again. And I wound up talking about this with respect to, I think it was Silva and Allen. Because Allen's southpaw. But if you look at how John Silva enters, the foot position's a little bit better. His punch selection's a little bit different. Like he just knows how to handle that. Gautier struggled. He got a win. I still think he's one of the better prospects at middleweight, but this was a reminder that there's still a fair amount of work to do with him. So still be optimistic. I am, certainly. But let's remember that he's still very much a work in progress at this point. Nikita Krylov defeated Modestas Bukauskas via knockout, punches 4:57 to the third. Not a very good fight. Bukauskas is who he is. Krylov, even though he's a little bit washed, still found a win. Fight sucks. Light heavyweight sucks. Alex Perez defeated Charles Johnson via TKO, punches, a barrage of them, 3:16 of the first. Perez missed weight, which I don't love. Nobody does. But showed the value of your kicking game, even when it gets checked. He came out, threw a calf kick, threw a body kick. And each time, Johnson actually did a pretty good job of either getting his leg out of the way or checking. But each time that kick starts coming in, that leg comes up to check. It's very rare you stop people with low kicks. You can use your low kicks to set up your head kicks, or you use low kicks to get a reaction that you can then capitalize on. So he got Johnson on one leg and then crushed him with a left hook as the beginning of the end. So, yeah, good stuff from Perez. Josh Hokett defeated Denzel Freeman by 59 of the first. Freeman just gassed. Josh Hokett is not a great fighter. He's really not, but he's actually got a decent pace, especially for heavyweight. And he just made Freeman work a lot until Freeman legitimately couldn't stand at the end of that round, and the referee waved it off. I'm going to make a comparison here. I want you all to understand I am not comparing top potential between the two people. But if you watch this fight from Josh Hokett, I can tell you the vibe it gave me, not because I think Hokett's going to achieve what this guy achieved, but because I remember this guy's early fights, and some of them looked like this. That's Cain Velasquez. I'm not saying Josh Hokett's going to become champion. It's heavyweight. He might, but I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he's going to be as damaging, because Cain Velasquez would change you, man. He was a butcher. till his body fell apart because of improper training, but that's a whole other discussion. But if you look at Kane's early fights, I mean his early ones, like the first 5, 6, a lot of what he's doing is kind of what Shavkat did here. I can go at a good pace and you can't. And maybe I'm not the heaviest puncher in the world. Doesn't mean Kane didn't have, he developed pretty good power, but he wasn't a big submission threat. He wasn't necessarily going to turn your lights out in one punch, but he was going to make you work until you fell apart. And he did that a lot, especially early as he was still refining his skills. It's all that happened here, man. Josh Shavkat made Denzel Freeman work. Josh Shavkat didn't do all that much damage. I mean, he landed, but did you do a ton of damage? No. Freeman just couldn't keep up. And then when he gassed, he couldn't continue. And that's a viable way to win a fight at heavyweight. Heavyweight sucks. If you're a decent athlete with an okay gas tank and maybe a jab in the UFC heavyweight division, that can take you to the belt at this point. And then Shavkat did the post-fight promo thing that Dana White didn't love. I didn't like it because I'm me. I'm a grump about this stuff. I really am. But he did I'm going to come up with a bunch of, rhyming scheme stuff that cribs heavily from pro wrestling. That's what he did. And he said he wants to fight Waldo Cortez Acosta. Okay. Look, he's going to make that call. He's not going to get that fight, but sure, whatever. Again, Dana didn't like it because Dana hates all things that might be fun. Shouldn't say it that way. Dana White hates pro wrestling. I don't know why, but he does. Bear in mind, when I say I don't know why, that's not like how could anyone dislike pro wrestling? No, there's reasons. I don't know Dana's specifically, is the point there. But he doesn't like it. So the UFC eschews in always anything approximating high production value, presentation, fighter personality, anything unique, fun, or interesting. I said this before. I said this recently about the White House card. Why is everyone trying to be on that? There's a few reasons. Some people are trying to avoid it. Fair play. But one of the reasons I think a lot of people want to be on it is, one, you're probably not going to get that again. That's going to the extent that ever happens again, it's going to be a rarity. So going for something rare is definitely a thing that's understood. 2, the UFC, look, the UFC on the White House card, yes, there's a sports washing component to it. Just got to say that out loud, guys. You may not care. It may not bother you. You may be in full support of the current administration. I'm not here to talk politics with you. Okay, I'm not. But I'm happy to say that the Saudi Arabian government is sports washing when they bring WWE and boxing over there to launder their image. That's what they're doing. I mean, WWE had the Royal Rumble yesterday at a stadium, at this arena stadium built in 2 months. How do you think the Saudis did that in 2 months, guys? Fair wages? No, you get that via slave labor. So that's a problem. And they're just laundering their public image. The Trump administration right now is using this as an excuse to be kind of celebratory and somewhat launder their image. They are. Maybe you're okay with it. Maybe you like the administration and want to celebrate it too. Once again, I don't care. I have my issues with the current administration. There's things they do that I support. There's things they do that I don't. Not here to talk politics. But because of the nature of that event, there is an intersection there that it is disingenuous to ignore. There's a degree of PR sports washing going on with that event. Full stop. You can like it, you can dislike it, you can agree with it, you can disagree with it. It's just the way it is. But, and there's fighters that support the Trump administration, which is fine. Like I said, I know people that are largely in line with the administration. I know people that aren't. Don't care. It's politics. It's ugly. It's messy. And frankly, the siloing of information is I yelled about that before. Not going to do it again. Anyway, I also said that while it needs to be said that there's some sports washing going on there, it's just kind of cool to fight on the White House lawn, you know. And for as much as you can take issue with the political alignment of all that stuff, and I think it does behoove people to at least acknowledge it. I do think it also needs to be said that as a general rule, it's kind of cool. It's going to be cool to say I fought at the White House. That's just a cool thing. And the UFC doesn't do cool stuff. They don't. If they bring the circus to town, it's going to look as much like the circus they had last week as they can possibly make it. That's just what they've chosen to do. So any opportunity for fighters to then do something that they think is cool because the UFC machine isn't, they will take. So, yeah. Anyway. And Josh Hokett, getting back to point. Josh Hokett is trying to do a little of the pro wrestling thing because, again, for some reason, the UFC operates in this weird intersection of we want fighters to, try and help us. Don't need that as much anymore, but they like fighters to do the promotional work for them as much as possible, but we don't want you to get over enough that you're a problem or that you offend Dana's aesthetic sensibilities. Like that Venn diagram has one point of overlap right about there. And it's exactly the UFC. Occasionally it's WWE being like, well, we don't like that this guy got over. But the whole point of pro wrestling, and MMA has more in common with pro wrestling than it does with boxing. I've said that before. It's pretty well documented. The whole point of pro wrestling is to get over. It's not to be the best wrestler. That helps, but it's to get over. Some people get over with their really good wrestling. Yes. But you want to get over. You want to move merch. You want to move tickets. You want to have big crowd reactions. You want the audience invested in what you're doing. That's it. That's the game, guys. The game of professional wrestling distilled down to that. Done in the format of simulated combat. In the realm of actual combat, you don't move merch because the UFC doesn't have merch. You don't have individual fighter merchandise unless you make a deal for it, and then you can't mention it on the UFC broadcast. And you only show up 3 times a year at most. So people struggle to really connect with you or remember you. The UFC certainly isn't going to go out of its way to promote you. So they want you to be over enough to have fun, but they will not do anything to help you get over. The UFC shtick for a long time has been we're a platform for this. And then you do it yourself. But if you don't do it the way they like, then they get pissy. It's the worst of all possible worlds. So that's where Josh Hokett is. Trying to get over, and being honest, we're about 4 more away of these wins and promos from Hokett for them turning endearing in a kind of quasi-pathetic sense. And kicking everything off, Ty Miller defeated Adam Fugit via TKO knee and punches, 4:59 of the first. Ty Miller is an okay prospect. Adam Fugit is largely there to make people look good. So, bonuses, fight of the night went to Gaethje and Pimblett. Totally understandable. Performances went to Hokett and Miller. I might have gone Krylov over Hokett, personally. Also of note, Alex Perez did not get a finish bonus because he missed weight. The UFC will pretend that's a real standard they hold to until they choose not to, like all their standards that they arbitrarily ignore whenever it becomes inconvenient for them. So my full report for UFC 324 is in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. Go give it a read if you're so inclined. Always appreciate it. That took about as long as I expected it to. That doesn't mean I'm happy about it. So let's move on to UFC 325 from yesterday. So, what did we get here? Well, we got maybe the most egregious bit of cheating I've seen on the scales since Daniel Cormier. This was ridiculous, by the way. So Aaron, I think I saw them pronounce it Tau. It's Tau, but depending on where he's from, and I think he's from somewhere in Oceania because he's got the Maori face tats. So I think Tau would be more appropriate than like, because that's different if it's like Japanese, that's Taue. Anyway, so he gets on the scale and he asks for the privacy curtain. Now, it used to be that this was just a towel they'd hold up in front of the scales. Then the women got into fighting. And it kind of got to the point where everyone was like, okay, we're okay kind of just holding up an obstruction from just the front, from like the waist, from like the, mid torso down for guys, because no one cares about male privacy or body issues. But we can't do that for women. Sorry, that came across as a little bit more aggressive than I wanted it to, but you can't do that for women. I mean, there was that whole thing with, was it Gina? Might have been Gina Carano. There was a woman who was having trouble making weight, so she got on the scale naked. And to sort of, again, not just do what they do for men, they had a person on each side of her. So if like she's here, so if we're looking at the top, like if this is the scale and this is the audience, you had one person here and one person here. All right. Audience, one person. This person is holding a towel that goes from here to here and one corner of the one that goes across this way. This person's doing the same thing, holding the other corner of this towel and then both ends of this one. And it wound up slipping and it was embarrassing. And again, I think it was Gina, but don't quote me on that. And so what they've done nowadays for this kind of thing is they have a built privacy curtain that covers that same area. It's again three sides of a square. You come in through the back, but the other three sides are obstructed. And it's built with metal pipe. I think this one was built with PVC, it looked like, or metal piping, but it's just a loose structure to hold the cloth that obscures people's vision for privacy. And Toe strips down, gets on the scale, and the thing is around the scale, right? Because it doesn't touch the scale, but you can put the cloth in front between what the commission official is reading and where the fighter is. You got that space there. And Toe, standing on the scale, does the double bicep, which you're not supposed to do while you're weighing in anyway, because arms going up and down and affects, it's a whole thing. But he's not just doing this because it's a thing. He's resting his elbow on the frame of this thing. Like both of them are on that frame. So he initially weighs 122.5. And he thinks he got away with something. The commission gets together and is like, wait, okay, hang on. You are weighing that much under flyweight? Put your shorts on, get on the scale. If you weigh, if you're that far under, you don't need the privacy curtain. So put your shorts on, get on the scale. And the look of defeat on that guy's face. So he gets back on the scale and he weighs 129. Dude was rested. I said this about when the Cormier thing broke. Like he's resting his hands on the towel. I said this to people. Go in your bathroom, get on a scale, look at what you weigh, then just put one hand on the kitchen counter. Just rest it there. Don't lift, just rest. This, just taking that off of your frame, offloading that, will reduce your weight by about 5 pounds. If you want to feel better about yourself, just rest your hands on the table. The number on the scale will go down. So yeah, that was a thing. And so they're going to reschedule that bout. They shouldn't reschedule that bout. His original opponent, this was a road to UFC final. His opponent was Namsrai Batabayar. They should just give that guy the UFC deal. Like, you miss weight that badly, then you flagrantly cheat. Look, you come in and miss weight. I've got one of the more liberal policies about this. I give everyone a free one because I accept the randomness of the universe will do that to you. One, you missed weight by like 4 pounds. Well, 3 pounds for non-title, but like 3 to 4 pounds. That's a long way to miss. Second, you deliberately and knowingly cheat at your weigh-ins. I'm sorry. No. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You're done. I'm more forgiving of someone who tries their best to make weight, even if you miss by a lot. If you try your best, come in, miss, and just take it like a man, because it sucks. It really does. You're going to get criticized for missing weight. You just are. Again, the best case scenario is somebody like me going, you get one. The randomness of the universe will conspire to give you one. Well, and even then, there are plenty of people who made it through their careers without that one. But I will give you one personally. But when you show up and you so callously, so flagrantly cheat, I have no time or patience for you. The sport is not better off with you in it. The UFC doesn't need you. That was gross. They should not rebook that fight. They should just give his original opponent the UFC deal and move on. We also had a fight between Jimmy Crute and Dustin Jacoby fall apart. Crute tore his ACL. That sucks. Jacoby's been rebooked to fight this coming card. We lost a fight, but okay, so Quillan Salkild was originally supposed to fight Rong Zhu. Rong Zhu pulled out. He was replaced by Jamie Malarkey. More on that when we get to that fight, because it does play into what I want to say about it a little bit. Was there anything else in the build-up? I mean, we were all kind of down on that fight, but all right. So that's where we are. Okay. As for predictions, not you. I went 9-4. So on the road to UFC finales, I picked the 3 favorites originally because I was just picking favorites. Then I went, wait a minute. I shouldn't just pick all the favorites on this. The favorites, dude, 2 of the underdogs cashed on that one. So I just kind of said, as a general rule, these days, I'm going to pick most favorites for stuff like this that I'm not deeply familiar with, and then pick one that isn't. Just because. Maybe it hits, maybe it doesn't. I picked Nakamura and was feeling like an idiot until he landed that knee in the 3rd round. But yeah, I picked that guy I'll get his name right when I look at it. But Marfan was the favorite. I picked him. I picked I gotta look at that guy's name to pronounce it properly. I picked Sularongbo, but because he was the favorite, but he lost. Had I looked at the reach disadvantage, I may have picked differently. Because Louis had like 6 inches of reach. And they flashed the stat on this for this fight. One of the bigger stat lines is if you have at least 6 inches of reach in the UFC, someone with a 6-inch or more reach advantage wins 65% of the time. That's a pretty serious stat. I'm going to give that a lot of respect going forward. So I got that wrong. I picked Oban Elliott. I'm not saying I'm never going to pick Oban Elliott again, but I didn't cool on him as much as I should have after that loss to Ko. Going to reevaluate that one. Let's see. I picked Elikana because the Toffas suck. Picked Roston. Hang on. What else did I get wrong? Oh yeah, I picked Yijia over Offley. I still think Yijia should have won that fight. Sol killed to share. I picked Fiziev. I'm not saying I'm never going to pick Fiziev again, but there were some things there I didn't love. So I got the Rufi and Fiziev fight wrong. I got Elliott and Mikulev wrong. I got Ijan awfully wrong. I got Louis and Sorongbo wrong. I think that was it. I mean, most of these others were not all that hard to pick. Just being honest. Mostly, again, most of the favorites paid out. I didn't only pick favorites, but most of the guys I picked were favorites. I mean, Fiziev and Hoofy closed as a pick 'em. Anyway, so that's where we are. So year to date, 2 events in, I am 19-5. What did I say my goal was for this year? When did they get to 400? Which with 42, 43 UFC events, I do need to get around 10 right every card. So 9-4 won't quite get me there. Actually, I got to do better, but we're doing okay so far. I want to do 400. I want to do 300. Hang on, what was last year? I did want 400 because last year I went 388 and 125. Which is, again, I was happy with that, but that was close enough to 400. I think it's doable. So we will see how that plays out. So on to the fights themselves. Main event for the featherweight title, a rematch between Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopez. Volkanovski wins 249-46 and a 50-45. I was 50-45. You could have given Lopez, was it the second? It was 2 or 3 that, I think it was 3 where Lopez got the weird, like, sort of knockdown. There's one of those first 3 rounds that was close enough that I'm okay. I don't object to anyone giving it to Lopez. For the most part, this was pretty classic Volkanovski. The last time these two fought, Volkanovski circled to his right. This time around, Lopez was like, well, I hated what Lopez did in this fight so much. So Lopez kind of tries to stop Volk from circling to Volk's right. So Volk goes, okay, I'll circle left. Can you deal with that? The answer was no. Diego Lopez has some danger to him. He's got good power. His submission game is very quick and very offensive oriented, his grappling. I appreciate that. But, oh man. There's so much about his actual craft of his fighting that is just not good. It's really not good. His footwork was not quite as bad as it was last time, but it still wasn't good. His clinch work did improve. His actual up when he didn't want contact to be made, he did a much better job this time than last time of avoiding getting stuck in the clinch. So I want to give him credit for that. But what was your idea here, man? He broke both of his feet throwing kicks in no small part because his kicks aren't good. I mean, he messed up his left foot visibly throwing a body kick in, I think it was the 4th. Because he throws it only his toes in the very top, the very end of it, not just the top. If this is your foot. When I say hit with the top of the foot, I don't just mean like this. Because normally you want to try and kick with the shin, ideally, but kicking here, I try not to police that stuff too much. When I say he kicked with the top of his foot, I mean the end. He kicked with his toes and right where they connect. And they got jacked up. And he limped around for a little bit. And it's come out afterwards his feet got fractured up. So If you want to have a kick heavy offense, I'm not saying you can't, but man, you better have some of the technique dialed in. Not all of it. Kicking's one of those weird things. You don't have to have pretty kicks for them to be effective. A large part of good kicking technique is not about making them do more damage. It's about minimizing your exposure to injury from doing it wrong. I mean, Conor McGregor had some of the ugliest leg kicks in the world. I mean that. But they were effective because he steered people with them and knew what he was doing with them. They don't have to look pretty. You would never teach someone to kick like Conor mechanically. But if you wanted to look at how to use your kicks, Prime Conor used his kicks very effectively. So anyway, and again, didn't get super injured on most of them because proper technique about that is, again, minimizing your exposure to damaging yourself while maximizing damage to your opponent. But pretty technique isn't about doing more damage. It's really about kind of minimizing risk. Sort of the opposite of punching. I mean, there's a degree to which you want proper punching technique to minimize damage to your hands, but most of good mechanical punching is about delivering as much power as possible. Most of really good mechanical kicking is about minimizing your chances to damage your legs and feet. Not all of it, because really bad kicks, you can laugh them off. But some of the kicks that have actually bothered me the most have been ugly ones. Man, I saw you don't have kicks that look like Prime Aldo or Edson Barboza or pick a pretty kicker. But man, that sucked to get hit with. And it looked ugly, which means I now feel dumber because I got hit with an ugly kick that really bothered me. Anywho. A lot of good jabs from Volk. Volk's ability, one of his superpowers, is his ability to enter the pocket, do damage, avoid it, and get out. And it really does go to show how great Ilia Topuria is, because that same sequence was how Topuria built to the finish against Volk. Whereas that's where Volk does a lot of his really good work. Couple of fun little grappling exchanges. Near the end of the first round, Volk jumped for a guillotine on Lopez, which was funny. It was near enough the end of the round. Lopez had forced a clinch, and Volk could wrap the head, so he just kind of went, sure. I got a decent grip here on your neck. Why not? Most that happens is I spend 10 seconds on my back, and I'm not worried about you from there. So he jumps for the guillotine. It's kind of funny. He avoided a decent armbar attack in the fifth. This was a waste of time. I'm somewhat happy about this because I love Volk. Who doesn't love Volk? One of the more likable guys in the space. He's got that cooking YouTube channel, which is actually really good. The fact that there's people who only met, were introduced to who he is through the cooking channel and then discovered later, oh, wait, he's one of the best mixed martial artists of all time, is a little bit funny to me, but, I'm not going to complain about it. But Volk is also 37, 38. Yeah, he's 37. He'll be 38 in September. So, 37. We don't have a lot of fights with him left, guys. And it's going to suck when he retires. It is, because I have loved watching his fights. I think he's the best featherweight in MMA history. Some of that is down to his record of achievement versus the other people in that conversation. The only other two guys in that conversation are Max Holloway and Jose Aldo. Volkanovski's record versus those two guys is 4-0. He beat Jose Aldo 30-27 in Rio de Janeiro. He beat Max Holloway 3 times in a row. The third fight between those two is one of the most singularly great performances this sport has ever produced. He went 5-0 against Max Holloway. Guys, even other people who have beaten Max haven't done that. that's kind of, there's a lot of people who also try to kind of downplay Aldo. Like one of the talking points coming out of this was Volkanovski has tied Jose Aldo for most wins in UFC featherweight title fights with 8. Two things. One, Aldo's were consecutive. Let's give Aldo his flowers here. Two, if you want to understand the greatness of Jose Aldo, you cannot start your understanding of him with his arrival in the UFC. If you do not watch what he did, a couple of fights to get to the WEC, I mean, he beat the guy who was largely considered the best featherweight in the world. Nogueira's the last name, but it's not it's not Big or Little Nog. Aldo beat him in the WEC, which was the only place you could get featherweight talent. Dude, he knocked out Cub Swanson in 3 seconds with a flying knee. He stopped Matt Brown clean. He beat the crap out of Uriah Faber. He beat the crap out of Manny Gamburian. I know that's not a name that means a whole lot these days, but dude, if your understanding of Jose Aldo is limited to what he did in the UFC, you are missing half the story. Watch his WEC stuff. Frankly, he's a different fighter at that point. Like young, more athletic Jose Aldo is terrifying. I'm not an Aldo revisionist. When I rank Volk above him, it is with full knowledge that you can make the argument about about Aldo given his enormous win streak. Like I can make the argument for Volk, but if your argument is Aldo based on sheer body of work over a really long period of time, that's fair, man. That's a fair argument to make. It really is. But we wasted this Volkanovski fight. We don't have a lot of these. He is one of the best tacticians the sport's ever produced. He weaponizes things in this game that most people don't consider. He dismantles your game. He disarms people. He disarms some of the most dynamic fighters in the sport. And we stuck him in there with a guy who the only thing he had to do was, okay, I'll circle left instead of right this time. And then just do everything else I did. And it'll work almost better than it did the last time. Dude, he's not going to be around much longer. And we decided this was what we were going to do. No, man. Look, I'm glad he won. Partially because if he lost, he might have retired, and professional wrestler AJ Styles sort of retired earlier that night, earlier that day in the Royal Rumble. And I don't know that my heart could have handled losing AJ and Volk on the same day in that capacity. So happy to see him win, but dude, if he's gonna lose, and again, he's 37, guys. One, the only thing that's beating Volk at this point is the only thing that beat him, first of all, another really, really, really exceptional fighter in Ilia Topuria getting Volk on a somewhat inadvisably quick turnaround, but Ilia was kind of inevitable anyway. So generational guy like Ilia or Father Time, that's when you really know you're one of the greats. When the only thing that beats you is age. Like, who's beaten this guy on the merits? Right? Like, what I maintain, man, if you could take the best version of Volk, the guy that fought Max the third time, or the first fight with Islam Makhachev, like those two versions of Volk, to the current crop of featherweights are unbeatable. Again, Ilya might still have got him, but nobody else in this weight class right now, not Evloev, not Murphy, none of them. None of them beat that guy. But that guy was how many years ago? Yeah, that Max Holloway fight was 22. July of 22. So that's 3.5, 4 years ago. Time matters, especially at this age. But that guy, nobody at featherweight right now is beating that guy. Who he is now, still not going to be easy. But the only thing that's beating Volk is Father Time. And Father Time's record is darn near, religiously speaking, darn near undefeated. Barring a very, very small number of people throughout human history. Father Time's going to get you. Even then, death is not like the end of. Sorry, you're going to get me on a theological discussion, and we're not here for that. So, yeah, look, get Volk in there with Evloev or Murphy. He was advocating for that post-fight. God bless him, man. Volk's out there post-fight presser going, I'm the champion. I have a responsibility to the most deserving contender. Guys, this ain't boxing where he has a say. The UFC is the one dropping their responsibility. I yelled about this when they announced this fight. Go back and listen to it if you want. The UFC has a responsibility to preserve the meritocracy. And yeah, Volk has an obligation not to be a jerk about it. He's out there advocating for these guys that he feels are overlooked because he knows because he knows the sport has to have the integrity, at least some of the time. Like, I get that there is an entertainment component to this, and I really, really do. But if you ignore the meritocratic line, you absolutely disincentivize anyone from coming into this. You really do. And I yelled about that before. I'm not going to reiterate it too much. So very happy for Volk. Get him. Get him Murphy or Evloev. Don't do John Silva. There's some part of me that's like, so if Evloev's going to win an uninspired decision over Lerone Murphy, the UFC is going to go, no, we don't like him, so here's Silva. Don't do that. Don't do that. One, I don't think it does Silva any favors. Two, it's stupid. Oh, but no one's going to buy it. You don't care about buys anyway. Your tagline, Dana White, for this fight was, if you don't like it, don't watch. Well, if you're going to use that line, how about you use it in favor of the meritocracy instead of in favor of your preferential treatment? Man, if there's one good thing about this, the first two UFC events of 2026, it's a cynical way to phrase it, but the industry plants, the UFC's favored sons, did not win. The UFC wanted Patty to win. UFC probably wanted Lopez to win. Neither of them did. And you know what? There's a little bit of Schadenfreude in that for me, in no small part because two of my favorite fighters were the ones turning back the tide of favoritism. So you know what? Good on you guys. Look, just make Diego Lopez and Yair Rodriguez at this point. Come on. That's the fight you've been trying to make. Just make it anyway. Who cares? Neither of those guys has beaten Volk. And you want to throw them in there with the new champ, whether it's Murphy or Evloev, fine. But let the guys who have earned it get the shot, please. Co-main event, Benoit Saint-Denis defeats Dan Hooker via TKO, punches and elbows, basically from mount, 4:55 of the second. Little bit of a late stoppage here, for being honest, from the ref. Good first round for Hooker. Good distance management. Nasty front kicks. Hurt BSD a few times to the body with front kicks. BSD just kept on lumbering forward, though, and eventually tied up and could get some takedowns from there. Hooker tried a takedown. Well, they were tied up, I think Hooker sort of went for an Uchimata whizzer kick, or Santini did, to initiate a little bit of a scramble because he didn't like the hand position. That don't finish the takedown because Hooker whizzers hard enough for them both to kind of belly down. Actually, BSD kind of does a bit of a headstand and comes up. Then they tie up again, and Santini kind of just muscles his way through a double overhook Haraigoshi. And once on top, his top control and ground and pound is good because he gets on top, gets mount, winds up in that might have been in the first round. And then the second round, he counters a Hooker takedown, gets on top in like S mount, and just tries a couple of different arm triangles with the finishing mechanics are like that far off because he should have had that. By all rights, he should have had that. There's one point when Hooker, one of the ways to avoid getting arm triangled is you start out flat on your back. So I'm flat, guy's here, so he's got this arm up. He's choking me this way. Get that out of the frame. One of the ways you can avoid being choked because they want to get, hang on, hook the arm. Yeah, their head's here. So they're going to get off to this side and then leverage this up while they've got an arm here. One of the ways to avoid this is to get space behind this shoulder. So you come up over here. That's why when you try to flatten out, you need that the pressure that you have across here with your arm is really important. So, and a lot of the high profile jiu-jitsu guys these days will leave. They don't go all the way to side control. Most of their body gets off, but they leave one of the legs draped over the hips to try and prevent what Hooker did here, which is come up this way, up on this side, and it gets you space. From here, though, if you know what you're doing, you can adjust from a traditional arm triangle grip, which is usually kind of one of these. You can go to, I think I've seen it called the Kaiju choke. This is the version that, if you want an example, Brian Ortega hit on Yair Rodriguez. So instead of like a grip, kind of like this, you wrap and then you go to like the figure four and you compress down. And it's a really powerful variation. It's just not always easy to hit because you kind of need long arms for it. And there's a few other bits of minutia there. There always are. But he didn't know it or he didn't choose to go for it. So he wound up just pounding things out. Weird decision making from Hooker in the second round to go for that takedown and kind of close up because at range, man, he was having a good old time. Santini said he wants to fight like Paddy Pimblett or Max Holloway or, BMF title fight kind of thing. I could get down for BSD and Paddy Pimblett at this point. I really could. Lightweight, Mauricio Hufi defeated Rafael Fiziev via TKO punches, 4:30 of the second. Really good pressure from Fiziev. Like he got Hufi to the fence a lot and fairly quickly. What he didn't do was throw much offense from there. His offense was really muted. And Hufi, once he realized, like, oh, you're not really throwing anything? Okay. Like, the cage is only a problem if it obstructs your movement and compromises your defense. Otherwise, it's just a spot to be. It was just a spot to be for Hufi. You wind up hitting him with a nice counter right. Got the finish. Fiziev might be a little bit washed. I mean, dude fought Justin Gaethje twice, and those are not easy fights. But some really weird decision making from him. Hufi, he needed the win. He looked bad against BSD. And Fiziev never even trying to wrestle with him in any sort of real capacity was an odd choice, I thought. Especially once you got him to the fence. Like getting him to the fence and then never trying to close distance and get him down when his ground game looked that poor. Weird choice. But Hufi got a fairly redemptive win here. And I think, I know he's not full-time with the Fighting Nerds anymore. He's doing a bit of work elsewhere. And I think that might be to his benefit. So good win for him. Heavyweight. Oh, this fight. I want to yell about this so badly. I'm going to try not to, but I really want to. All right. Taliesin Teixeira defeats Taito Iwasa via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. This fight was so bad. You know how I know? Like, not just because I hated this fight. terrible fight. It's going on my worst of list. I need to update that after I get done with this show. There's a couple of people in my ward, my church ward, who are MMA fans. And as it's become a little bit more known that this is what I do, some of them will ask me about it on occasion. The first thing I got asked about by some of these people today was, so, how about that heavyweight fight, huh? When they're both just hands on the hips, bent over, sucking wind. And I just, oh, it hurts. Teixeira does okay for the first round. Avoids some of the big punches, does some okay groundwork in the second. But third, he's gassed. Tuivasa's gassed. It's terrible. Here's the thing about this. Both these guys are ranked. Tai Tuivasa came into this fight on a 5-fight losing streak and was still ranked number 12. What are we doing here? Teixeira at 14 was dubious. He was coming off that loss to Derek Lewis. Losing to Derek Lewis in the year of our Lord, what was that, last year? Yeah, 2025. You lose to Derek Lewis in 2025 in 35 seconds. That says something about your ceiling, my guy. It really does. Now, he might still kind of get around that. He's only 26, so you're ceiling right now. But man, again, Tuivasa, number 12, 5-5. His last win was over Derek Lewis in like 2022. Yeah, literally 2022. Oy. Hadn't fought since August of 24 when he and Jairzinho Rozenstruik had one of the worst fights of the year. God, that fight sucked. And here, ranked heavyweights midway through the third round, stopping and just going, I am shocked people cage side didn't pass out with how much oxygen these two jamokes were taking out of the room. Somebody posted on Twitter, X, heavyweight doesn't have to be like this, with a photo of the fight between Fedor and Krokop. And as someone who remembers that fight, who remembers Randy Couture, even Randy Couture and Gabriel Gonzaga, as someone who remembers Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos, I remember when heavyweight was a good division. It's never been the deepest division in the sport, but it used to be marquee. It used to still carry a premium. We are at a place right now. God help me for saying this. I have twinges of nostalgia for a couple, not all, of Tim Sylvia fights. Do you understand what saying that does to me? Look at me. I watched Sylvia Arlovsky 3. That is, to this day, along with Namajunas Esparza 2, the dirt worst UFC title fight you will ever see. Barring like weird, you can argue something like Couture Belfort 1 because it ends real quick with like the flukiest of injuries. Like short of that fight sucked. Tim Sylvia versus Jeff Munson was not good. Tim Sylvia versus Brandon Vera, not especially great. But somewhere in my head, watching this fight was, man, you know, Tim Sylvia did have a couple of good fights. Here's the other way to understand how bad the UFC's heavyweight division is right now. Take the best version of Tim Sylvia, even just a upper end version of Tim Sylvia. Drop him into the UFC title picture right now. He's a top 5 heavyweight. That big, lumbering, clinch heavy kind of goofball. I shouldn't be mean to Tim Sylvia. Because I don't think he deserves to be insulted. I'm talking only about his fighting style, not him as a person. Big, lumbering, kind of goofy. That dude from 20 years ago would still be competitive right now. You know how many people I say that about in the sport of MMA? Incredibly few. Dude, the best version of Jens Pulver is not top 5 lightweight right now. Best version of BJ Penn is. Best version of Sean Shirk, not a top 5 UFC lightweight. Best version of Rich Franklin, not a top 5 middleweight. Probably a top 15 middleweight, but not a top 5. GSP would still be like best welterweight in the world. But okay, Tyron Woodley. Best version of Tyron Woodley. Top 10 welterweight, maybe not top 5. Like Tim Sylvia, the best version of Tim Sylvia, more or less the best version, in the modern UFC landscape clears 90% of that division easily. I don't like saying that. I don't have great nostalgia for Tim Sylvia. Like the joke for a long time was he and Arlovsky kind of both were the only heavyweights worth watching in the UFC, and they kind of killed the division as a result of that. No small part because the UFC couldn't attract heavyweights. Pride did, but it's another thing. That's where we are with heavyweight right now. This division sucks. Unequivocally, like, let's run down what the UFC's done wrong here. Okay? For a variety of reasons, you fumbled John Jones versus Francis Ngannou. Now, Francis didn't make that easy. John didn't make that easy. Not pretending that trying to navigate that was the smoothest thing in the world. I understand complications here. You still couldn't make it happen. Francis Ngannou left. Full on left. Not good. Happens sometimes. Still not good. In conjunction with this, really not good. You wasted the heavyweight title for an extra year for John Jones and Stipe Miocic for some reason. You wasted it. You're screwing over Tom Aspinall. This is attached. You're screwing over Tom Aspinall right now. Some of it right now is like medical issues on his part. I get it. But you screwed him over. The guy who should have been leading the charge. You screwed him over. You can't recruit heavyweight talent. Rico Verhoeven, one of the best heavyweight kickboxers of his generation, maybe the best, was interested in coming to the UFC, and the UFC lowballed him, so he laughed and walked. Your heavyweight division is not in a place where you can afford to look at Rico Verhoeven, even somewhat aftermarket Rico, and go, no, we don't need you. Yeah, you do. That division desperately needs him. You know what else that division desperately needs? Francis Ngannou. Dana White, I don't want to do business with him. Buddy, I don't care what you want. You don't care what I want. I don't care what you want. The UFC doesn't care what the consumer wants anymore. More on that if we really want to get into what the business model for the UFC has become. But for the sake of argument, Dana's petty personal beef is keeping maybe the best heavyweight in the world out of the UFC. Who benefits from this? No one benefits from this. Your division is ass. Deep fried ass. You had 2 ranked guys whose fight would not have been out of place on a freaking Tough Enough fight. Like, I vividly remember this. There was a heavyweight fight Not Tough Enough, The Ultimate Fighter. I've seen this fight on The Ultimate Fighter when heavyweights fight. And they go for a round, in the second round, they're both just dead. And look, I've been that tired. All right? I really have. I've been that tired doing martial arts activities. I am not here to say that if you put me in there with Taliesin Teixeira, I'd survive until the third round. I probably wouldn't. Being realistic. Not here to big myself up. I am here to tell you that if you're a ranked heavyweight, gassing after a round and a half is unacceptable. That is not a thing that should ever happen. And it happens all the time. It's not like I'm just killing these two guys. I'm not just killing them. The division. This division sucks. This division is in profound trouble. The UFC has done nothing to maintain it. The UFC sucks at attracting talent. The operational assumption by the UFC has been MMA will grow, people will be interested in it, we'll be the only game in town, they will come to us. Well, your business has grown. The MMA talent pool hasn't. You haven't attracted MMA heavyweights from anywhere. They'd rather do almost anything else. And that's just where we are, guys. Fight sucked. Quillan Salkill defeated Jamie Malarkey via neck crank / rear naked choke, 302 of the first. Malarkey stepped in on short notice. Salkill was just kind of better. I would have preferred the Salkill and Rongju fight. I think Rongju would have made Salkill answer some questions that Malarkey didn't. Bit of a weird way to get around to that point, but that's where that kind of is. Salkill wants a top 15 guy next. That seems like a little bit of a stretch, but honestly, if he fights someone like 14 to if the rankings went to 20, he should be fighting 14 to 17. Somewhere in that range seems very appropriate for him right now. Prelims, Billy Alacana defeated Junior Tafa with a rear naked choke, 318 of the second, not a good fight. Cam Roston defeated Cody Brundage via TKO 408 of the second. Cody Brundage is not very good. Ralston looks okay. He looked okay here. Still got some work to do, but I'm okay with Ralston. Definitely a decent prospect. Also at middleweight, Jacob Malkoon ended a long layoff and beat up Torres Finney via unanimous decision, 2 30-26 and a 30-27. That was 30-25, I think. Torres Finney sucks. Malkoon had a real good jab going. And the fact that Torres Finney's stand-up was worse than Cody Brundage's and he made Malkoon's striking look that good says something. Like, Finney's not ready for this. At welterweight, Jonathan Mikulev defeated Oban Elliott via technical submission, rear naked choke, 331 of the second. Pretty decent first round for Elliott, but Mikulev kind of gutted his way through it. Once they got to grappling, Mikulev had a pretty big edge. His striking is still a little slow. He looked off that first round. Got kind of beat up by Elliott. But Elliott's kind of ground game overall is being a little exposed. He's also a little bit of a front runner. If you get him on the back foot, not just like going backwards, but like momentum logically on the back foot, he struggles a bit there. On the early prelims, Con Offley defeated Ijavi a majority decision. 2 29-28s for Offley and a 28-28. They gave Ija a 10-8 second, which is, I think, understandable. I thought Ija won the fight. Not a good fight. The next three are Road to UFC finals. For the record, Road to UFC, one of the better things the UFC produces. Don Marfan defeated Sungwook Kim via unanimous decision, 30-27. That was an okay fight. Keiichiro Nakamura defeated Sebastian Slay via knockout, basically knee and punches, 3:48 of the third. I forget how to pronounce this guy's last name. I think it's Zalay. Yeah, Zalay. Excuse me. Zalay had a very good first two rounds. Moved well, good striking. Nakamura looked kind of stuck in first gear. Third round, Nakamura wakes up and he's able to land a really nice intercepting knee. He was winning the round before that point anyway. Decent little fight there. And kicking everything off, Lawrence Louis defeated Sorongbo via split decision, 29-28. Okay, with that being split, not a terribly compelling fight. And that was it. So your bonuses. Let's see. You had the finish bonuses, of course, that went to anyone who got a finish in this case. BSD, Elikana, Roston, Mikolev, Nakamura. Fight of the night went to Volkanovski and Lopez. Fair enough. Performances went to Hoofy and Salkild. Also fair enough. Yeah, again, fair enough. Not going to die on the hill for any one of those. Yeah, that's that. Full report, MMA Zone, 411mania.com. Y'all know where to find that. So let me adjust this. So give that a read if you're so inclined. I always appreciate it. You know how that works. And the UFC is in full swing these days. So let's move on to UFC Fight Night 266. I was right on that. Okay. My spreadsheet's more up to date. Okay. We are back in the apex, the meta apex. Props to Mark Zuckerberg deciding to sponsor the one thing about the UFC that everyone hates. They've been doing the Zuffa boxing stuff from there, and it's still not going over well. No atmosphere Zuffa boxing is... for what they were promising, they are wildly under-delivering. Just going to put it like that. But some of that is the fact that they tried to hype themselves up as a really big deal. And they're not a really big deal. Let's see. So this card, if you squint, you can get to, I think, 4 fights that are interesting. Maybe 5. If you squint, you can get to 5 that are interesting on this card. The main event is actually a good fight. Mario Bautista, Vinicius, Lockdog Oliveira. Have we lost anything from this card in the build-up to this that's been interesting? Don't care about Veretennikov. We'll talk about that when we get to it, but that's not worth referencing. Then we were supposed to get Rivzan Kuniev and Ryan Spann. The UFC has tried to make that fight like 4 times. Please stop. Spann withdrew. Jailton Almeida's in. We'll get to that fight when we get to it. That's a terrible fight. We were supposed to get Urdan Satabaldiev and Julius Walker. Satabaldiev pulled out. And Dustin Jacoby stepped in. Again, his fight with Jimmy Crute got canceled, so he steps in here to replace that, and he will fight Julius Walker. That fight also is probably going to suck. Light heavyweight. Sucks. Okay, so main event, Mario Bautista, Vinicius Oliveira. Really good fight. Bautista coming off of that loss to, was that Umar? Yeah, Umar Nurmagomedov, October of last year. That ended a really long winning streak from him. Bautista's a good fighter. Look, a lot of us are still bitter at him about the Jose Aldo fight and decision. I'm not going to pretend I'm not. But he is generally a very high activity, he's generally a pretty exciting fighter. Watch his fights his fight with Ricky Simone was pretty darn good. He ran over some guys early. Brian Kelleher, Benito Lopez, Guido Canetti, he ran over those guys. The fight with Patchy Mix wasn't bad. Mix looked like crap and is no longer with the UFC. But it's really just the Aldo fight that's kind of been the poisoned pill for everyone on Bautista. I think he and Lockdog are going to have a good fight, but Batista's the more fundamentally sound fighter. Lockdog, however, is a murder machine. I mean, that's slightly overstated now. His last 3 fights have gone the distance. Ricky Simone is just kind of tough. Said Nurmagomedov was very difficult to finish. And Kyler Phillips. But Oliveira is long, rangy, and kind of a mean fighter when he gets going. I've said this before about other guys. Like, they're just mean. I think I said this about Yair Rodriguez. Lockdog is kind of the same thing. Everything about him looks like it hurts. Like, I don't get that feeling with everybody, which is weird because, it's fighting, so everything should hurt. But some guys, they just have this look about their fights and their style that, like, everything feels hard and sharp and just like, ow. I get that with Lockdog. There's a little bit of a physical dimension here. So Batista's not a small bantamweight. He's 5'9", 72 inches of reach. Oliveira, 5'9". Why is that not listed there? Let me see if I can find it over here. Because it should be listed here somewhere. I don't need his history. I just need his stat line. Like, how do you not just give me that? Stats and records. Strikes by position. How about you just tell me his measurements? That's so weird. All right, fine. It's not on the UFC's website. To Tapology, which will, in fact, have that information for me. 70 and a half. So Bautista's a little bit taller. Sorry, the same height, but Bautista actually has a little bit of a reach advantage. He was 71 and a half, right? No, 69 inches of reach. So slight reach advantage for Oliveira, but that's nothing to sneeze on. It's not. Oliveira's on the win streak. I don't think the setback to Umar is going to derail Bautista, though, in any sort of like major way. Okay, bring up my odds here just for curiosity's sake. Odds are with Bautista. Okay, that tracks. Just trying to think about this. If this were 3 rounds, I would take Bautista. I think Oliveira trying to hurt him and get him out of there in just 3 rounds is very difficult. 5 rounds with a guy who's really good about finishing things is actually very difficult. So Oliveira, I think Oliveira is a live dog. The odds have this at about minus 200 on Bautista. I'm thinking that'll probably come down a little bit. I get where that's coming from. Bautista's the more fundamentally sound fighter. Oliveira's had some cardio issues in the past. Now, not in 3rd round stoppages, but Bautista's kind of a cardio machine. Like, that dude, he understands that against the higher level of guys, one of the things that makes him work is his work rate and his being indefatigable. So it's also hard to pick against Bautista. He's just hard to beat. Not unbeatable, but he's hard to beat. Let me go with Bautista. I'm tempted to asterisk that. No, I'll rock with it. Okay, there's my usual disclaimer this year. If I see, oh, that was the other reason. Got to mention this. The other reason I leaned towards Patty was, Gagey getting over staff. So, because that'll mess with you, but couldn't do it. So if I see something like during fight week or whatnot that gives me pause, like something that looks like an injured hand or a medical thing, again, like a visible staff or anything like that, that in addition to weight misses does let me, I reserve the right to change my mind because I only do this once a week. So I don't actually get to watch fight week with these guys unless I wanted to start doing this on like Friday. And my Fridays are busy enough. So I'll go with Batista, and barring something that I can legitimately justify to all of you when I see you next week, that's where we're going to go. Co-main event is I don't think this is a great fight, mostly because I am not super high on Amir Albazi at this point. But Amir Albazi versus Kyoji Horiguchi. I'd rather Horiguchi just got a title shot off of his last win because I love Horiguchi, but Albazi is coming off a loss to Brandon Moreno in November of 24. He got a split decision over Kai Kara France before that in June of 23. Inactivity has been the death of this guy. So he goes undefeated through the regional scene, has a couple of wins in Bellator, loses to Jose Shorty Torres, wins another fight, gets to the UFC, where he beats Malcolm Gordon, goes back to flyweight to fight Jagas Zumagulov. But he fights once in 2020, the Gordon fight, once in 25 against Zumagulov, twice in 22 over Francisco Figueiredo and Alessandro Costa, both pretty good wins. And that's the point at which we all kind of went, might be something here. That you start doing some of that stuff, like flyweight, you're looking pretty good. Then he doesn't. Then he doesn't fight from December until June, so decent layoff there. Again, a dubious split decision over Kai Kara France. And that was again June of 23. Then he doesn't fight again until November of 24. He's had, I think, like neck and elbow issues. And that November of 24 fight was the last time we saw him. So he's been out for over a year again. That's not good. And Horiguchi, I think, is really kind of ready to start firing on all cylinders. So he looked real good beating Ulanbekov. So I have no problem going Horiguchi here. But that's like the other important fight on this card. After that, it's going to get real hard to find stuff to care about. In no small part because next we have heavyweights, Jailton Almeida and Rivzan Kuniev. This fight's probably going to suck. Almeida coming off of that loss to Alexander Volkov. That fight kind of sucked. That was the fight where he got like takedowns and had a lot of top control and literally nothing with it. Yeah, nuts to that. He's on short notice and here to fight Kuniev. Kuniev lost in June to Curtis Blades in his UFC debut. That was June of last year. It was a split decision to Curtis Blades. He didn't look great, but Blades is a tough draw for your UFC debut. I would have favored him over Span. Almeida's a horse of a different color, though. Odds are a little bit with Almeida. Kuniev's the kind of guy that Almeida usually beats. I might do Kuniev for the meme, though. Yeah, you know what? Okay. I will eat this one if I'm wrong, but I have a thing, if you don't know. Right. I tend to favor Russians over Brazilians because it amuses me to do so. That's how long I've been around. I remember when that was a rivalry in MMA. Kuniev is the underdog. I can totally see Almeida winning this, for the record. But I'll go with Kuniev. We'll just see what happens. Middleweight. This is not going to be a very good fight, but this will probably be at least somewhat entertaining given the two, I say this with love, meatheads involved. We have Michał Oleksiejczuk and Marc-Andre Barrio. Oleksiejczuk, since moving to the Fighting Nerds, that actually turned out to be a decent move for him. He's beaten Cedric Dumas and Gerald Meerschaert. Now, granted, neither of those guys are super high level, but him coming, he's, he had a rough stretch there. Lost Kevin Holland and Shara Magomedov. He still disputes that Holland call by the ref a little bit. But the Fighting Nerds seem to have kind of done him some good. And Barrio is not a bad fighter, but he's 35 and he's taken a fair amount of damage, man. He's 1-4 in his last 5. His only win was over Bruno Silva. He also lost to Shara Magomedov. I think this is Oleksiejczuk. What do the odds say? Oh, the odds agree with me. So we'll go with Oleksiejczuk. Barrio's just too hittable. He relies a lot on being durable, and I think that durability is wearing down. Bantamweight, John Matsumoto and Farid Basharat. This is an okay fight. Basharat, 28, undefeated. I think generally the better of the two. Javid's had some setbacks. Farid hasn't lost, again, undefeated, 14-0, coming off a win over Chris Gutierrez. That was a solid win. Matsumoto's a bit different. Gutierrez will just circle and leg kick with you. Matsumoto will get after you. Because Matsumoto, he's 17-1. Coming off a win over Miles Johns, he lost to Rob Font. Both of those were split decisions. I think both fights could have realistically gone either way. This is a good fight. Not great, but good. I think the odds are with Basharat. I don't like how heavy that is. So currently the odds for Basharat are almost 3-1, like minus 290, minus 265 to minus 290. I don't know that I like him that much. If you can get like 2-1 on Matsumoto, ooh, buddy. That legitimately, like, again, I don't endorse gambling, but like as the saying goes, if you're looking for value, plus money on Matsumoto, like Basharat's not bad, but is he that much better than Matsumoto? Let me. Am I going to put my money where? I mean, I'm not going to gamble and put my money where my mouth is, but am I actually going to pick Matsumoto? If this was Javid, I would, because Javid now also fights a bantamweight. I would pick Matsumoto over Javid. I don't think I'm going to pick him over Farid. Let me asterisk this one. I got to see. No, spell it properly. There we go. Let me asterisk this one. I need to see a couple of things. I got to re-look at Farid's work, and I frankly got to double check a few things on Matsumoto too. But that's an okay fight. A not okay fight, light heavyweight, Dustin Jacoby and Julius Walker. This fight's gonna suck. Jacoby, dude, Julius Walker had a terrible debut. Jacoby's been real up and down. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He's stopped Vitor Petrino and Bruno Lopez. It's not bad, but he's not that far removed from being 1-4 in his last 5. Some of those losses were not great too. Like, I'll forgive you losing to Azamat Mirzakhanov. Mirzakhanov's pretty good. But you get stopped by Dominic Reyes in the first round in 2024. That's it's a little bit of a sign. And yeah, Walker, has he fought twice in the UFC or just once? I know at least once. Twice, yeah, 1-1. Yeah, he had a terrible debut against Alonzo Manafield. He beat Rafael Cerquera his last time out, but that wasn't a great fight either. The short notice is what kind of makes this interesting. If Jacoby had been prepping for Walker the whole time, I would have no problem going with Jacoby. I'm still going to go with him. But the short notice thing does make that slightly more interesting than I think it would be under other circumstances. On the prelims, Alex Morono and Daniil Donchenko. So Morono, I think, is starting to wear down. He's 35, 3-fight losing streak. Geez, just 2-5 in his last 7. Those wins are over Tim Means and Court McGee. Last 3 losses are to Nico Price, Daniel Rodriguez, and Carlos Leal. Not in a good spot. Donchenko, isn't he a tough dude? I think he won a tough season. Yeah, 12-2, 7-fight winning streak. And it's less than that. 3, 4. Yeah, it's a 5-fight winning streak. We don't care about the tough fights. And he did get a bit of an upset win over Rodrigo Cezándo. So Morono, aging, washed vet for his debut. Bit of an interesting bit of matchmaking there. And not against him, and not him against some other, younger guy, but I think Morono's a little bit past it. I've said before, man, Morono, a lot of his style is sort of predicated on some physical attributes that no longer really work for him the same way. He'll bounce around a lot, but that really wears down after the first 4 to 6 minutes of doing it. And I think the UFC are kind of going to try to make Donchenko a thing. So, dude, Morono's striking. He gets away with it, but he does a lot of real loopy stuff. And I think Donchenko will be able to get close and elbow him when he goes for those big looping punches. And that's what passes for my analysis some of these times. Bruna Brazil and Ketlin Souza. God, who cares? Women's bantamweight is bad. Souza, 2-fight losing streak, both split decisions to Angela Hill and Piero Rodriguez. Alrighty. Brazil. 11-5-1. 3-3 in the UFC. She lost to Denise Gomes, beat Shanna Bowden, lost to Loma Bunmi, beat Molly McCann, lost to Wang Tong, beat Shi Ming. I will never forgive her for that. How dare you beat Shi Ming? We were all happy to watch her just do some more crazy, more fun stuff. Sorry, I shouldn't Shi Ming's kind of the fact that she was a doctor and fighting against her parents' wishes and scored that wild head kick too. I got a soft spot for Shi Ming. What do you want me to say? Souza really needs the win. Brazil been a bit up and down. Come on, Souza. She's only 30. 5'3". Brazil is 5'6". Ooh. 65.5 inches of reach on Brazil. 63 for Souza. It's not as big a reach disadvantage as you'd think given the height discrepancy. I want to say this does feel a little bit like Brazil the more I think about it. What are the odds? Odds are with Souza. You know what? I'm going to buck those and go with Brazil. But I don't know. Women's bantamweight is just so bad. Bantamweight, regular bantamweight, Javed Basharat and Said Nurmagomedov. Interesting. So Said Nurmagomedov, more of a kicker than anything. 2-fight losing streak to Vinicius Oliveira and Bryce Mitchell. He's only 1-3 in his last 4. The losses, however, been to Jonathan Martinez, pretty good. And then the aforementioned 2-fight losing streak. That Mitchell loss is rough. Not going to lie about that. That Mitchell loss is rough. He's gassed out a bit in the past. Javid's in a bit of a rough patch. He hasn't won a fight since January of 23. He had a no contest with Victor Henry. Then he lost to Ayman Zahabi and Ricky Simone. Dude, Ricky Simone knocked him out last year. Not quite a year ago. Bloom is off the roads for Javid. It's kind of why I want to double check some stuff with the other one because, while I think Fared's probably better overall, the wheels are going to come off that at some point, and Matsumoto might be the guy to do it. I feel like Saeed probably gets back on track here, but do I think Basharat is... He's only 30. I think he can fix that. All right. You know what? I'm gonna asterisk both of the wind up asterisking both of the Basharats. But I need to see a couple of things about Said Nurmagomedov, because I have forgot some of the specificity of his game in the past, and it's bitten me, and I want to double check it. Women's flyweight, Wang Tong and Eduardo Mora. The UFC still trying to make Wang Tong a thing, which I think they can. Mora is not a bad fighter. She's 12-1, 3-1 in the UFC. Her flyweight campaign has been iffy because she missed weight. She missed weight a couple of times down at strawweight. That made her move up. She beat Veronica Hardy, beat Lauren Murphy. Lauren Murphy retired after that fight, though. This is probably Tong. Sorry, Wong. It's listed differently. Wong is the family name. She's 3-1, 2-fight winning streak. Got a lot of hype off of that one knockout win in her UFC debut, which was a good win. Don't get me wrong, but struggled against Gabriela Fernandez. The two fights she's had since, she's looked solid. She might be ready to rebuild and actually go on the run that people wanted her to be able to go on initially. We'll see, but I'm okay going with her. She's a decent favorite. Bantamweights, Muin Gafarov and Jakub Wiklatz. Very close fight according to the odds here. Good grief. I don't disagree with it. This is a good fight. So I was one of the guys mentioning that, Wiklatz is gonna be pretty good. 17-3-2, 7-fight winning streak. Good UFC debut over Patchy Mix. Yeah, he's solid. Hasn't lost since 2020. Long time good run through KSW. And again, a solid UFC debut. Mix turned out to have kind of washed out of the UFC. But they had a pretty good fight. And Gafarov, I still think decently of. 20-6, 2-fight winning streak, 2-2 in the UFC. Tough start. Lost to Jose Castaneda, and then Said Nurmagomedov in your second UFC fight's tough. But since then, he's beaten Kyung Ho Kong and Rinya Nakamura. Very respectable wins. Vikwax has the better resume to this point, but Gafarov is a tough matchup stylistically. The odds are slightly leaning towards Gafarov across the board. If Vikwax tries to pull guard as much on this guy as he did on Mix, going for leg entanglements on Patchy Mix makes more sense because Mix didn't have tremendously damaging ground and pound. Gafarov has solid ground and pound. So that's a interesting little fault line. The cardio is a bit of a question mark. Vikwax did. I'm not going to say gassed out, but he and Nix fought in such a way that his energy levels were depleted. Not that I think Gafurov is some unstoppable cardio machine, but it is a bit of an open question there. I'm just gonna go with the favorite on the night. No, I'm not. It's a little bit of the coward's way out. I think I'll avoid that this time. Sometimes I will do that, but all right, we'll go with Rick Watts. I may regret that a lot. Like I said, I still think fairly highly of Gafurov, so we'll see. Women's bantamweight. So that will suck. Claudia Seguya and Priscilla Cachoeira. I don't pick Priscilla Cachoeira on principle. I don't think she should be in the UFC. And frankly, with her disgusting behavior and fight tactics, I think she should be run out of the sport. So I pick Seguya because that is a principled stance I'm taking for whatever it's worth. And I don't know where this will fall on the card, but we do have Nikolai Veretennikov stepping in on short notice to fight Jose Enrique Souza. Let me. Oh, wait, did that fall out? Looks like Souza withdrew. I'm gonna leave this blank for now. Yeah, I think this didn't. I think this didn't happen, so I'm gonna leave that alone. Okay, and that looks like that's the card. So yeah, Saturday, MMA Zone 411mania.com. I'll have you covered. Stop by, say hello. I always appreciate it. Let's say that. Oh wait, I got that number. Okay, there we go. Now we're safe. Alrighty. Jeez, we've been going for a bit. This was just going to be a long one, guys. I had a lot to catch up on, so I apologize. Let's do a couple of quick bits of news. Some of this is just depressing. Oh god, both of these are depressing. Why'd I do this to myself? So news broke this last week. People saw Shavkat Rakhmonov at a regional MMA event in Kazakhstan, somewhere in that area. On crutches, still in the ACL surgery knee brace. If you've seen someone not too long after ACL surgery, you know which brace I'm talking about. And that made all of us go, hey, wait, what? He's been out for a while with knee surgery. What the heck? His manager confirmed that there was some, I don't think he got into detail about it, but there was some either complication or aggravated injury. I don't know what exactly caused it, but something went wrong with that same knee. He just had surgery again. Is going to be out for another like 10 months. Oh, Rakhmonov's going to be one of those great what if stories, isn't he? Because, man, so good. He shouldn't have fought with messed up knees against Brady. He should have just, Gary. Sorry, not Brady. Gary. He should have just pulled out of that fight. But dude's turning into Dominic Cruz without the title reign. And hopefully he recovers quickly, but that sucks. On the, it's a plus side. As a consequence, the welterweight title picture does get a little clearer when we know Shavkat is out of the equation for a while. So there's at least that. But yeah. All right. And lastly, there's nothing. Former lightweight champion Rafael dos Anjos has announced he had his third knee surgery in 14 months. It's over, guys. Look, I respect the heck out of RDA. His lightweight run title win. Like, he didn't have the longest lightweight title run of all time, but he was a big dog against Anthony Pettis, and he then wrote the blueprint for beating Pettis. Kind of sucks that he got caught against Eddie Alvarez the way he did, but he bulldozed Cowboy Cerrone. Dos Anjos is one of the guys who, if you want to understand what pressure fighting in MMA looks like, look up his lightweight run. Like the best version of RDA, one of the best pressure fighters the sport's ever produced. A very good technical fighter. He's one of those guys who, if you don't mind me making a couple of boxing comparisons, I know these borderline on the heretical, but hear me out. If you ask real boxing fans to name like really great technicians, who like championship level technicians, you get guys who will you will hear the names like Ezzard Charles or Jersey Joe Walcott or guys like that. And if you're a super casual boxing fan or even just like a semi-casual fan, you'll go, wait, who? I think RDA is going to wind up in that kind of position when it's all said and done. A great fighter. Again, the best version of him, great. His run to the belt, and again, his title reign before the Alvarez fight, all great. Some really, really exceptional stuff. Dude, the fact that he moved up to welterweight and had the success that he did is remarkable. I mean, didn't he beat Robbie Lawler? Pretty sure he did beat Robbie Lawler at welterweight. Like, dude was great. A genuine, great. But he's going to wind up in that position where if you don't know, then you don't know. Like, he's not going to penetrate the MMA, the MMA, the broader MMA zeitgeist to the extent that such a thing even exists with the fan turnover. But man, that many knee surgeries in that proximity, like, I respect your career, man. Again, you're a great fighter, Hall of Famer. You're going to get, sadly, kind of overlooked and forgotten, but one of the best. And he deserves those accolades, and it's probably about time to retire, and that just saddens me because for a while, I really, really liked watching him fight. As he got more and more washed, less and less. But the really good versions of RDA, that dude was... Fighting him was a tall task. A real tall task that some really, really good fighters couldn't handle. So I think that's all the news bits I had. We've been going for 2.5 hours anyway. So you might know what we do now. We check the old social medias for anything that may be relevant to the discussion. Let's see. No, that's not new. That's my feed. It's full of professional wrestling stuff. Okay. So normally I just pause for this, but because I'm live streaming it, you get to listen to me. I will try to be at least moderately entertaining. You know what? While I'm scrolling, I'll talk very briefly. Yeah, Shakur Stevenson beat the crap out of Teofimo Lopez last night. Dude, Shakur has really blossomed into one of the best guys in the world. You had Shushu Carrington, got a real nice knockout. That dude's legit. Let's see. So if you're on the boxing side, then yeah. That's definitely a thing. All right. I am... Yeah, some people are killing Tom. Look, Tom Aspinall said that he thought Volk last night was the best performance of Volk's career, and we all have to laugh at him. Look, given Volk's age, I get that it's going to be inflated a little bit, but the dude went 5-0 on all three judges' scorecards against Max Holloway. That's the best performance of his career. That's one of the best singular performances in the sport. Just for the record. Okay, yeah, I'm not seeing anything newsworthy here that's broken, and I don't feel like regaling you with stories from my feed. Yeah, Teofimo Lopez, man, if he had a real trainer, he could have. The fact that he got as far as he did, largely being trained by his dad, bit of a thing. Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing any MMA news. They tend to save that for Monday morning, largely because I do this Sunday evening. So I think we're about ready to be done on that note. Alrighty. It's been a bit of a long one, guys, and I know that we're going to be working out the kinks for a more consistent start time, and I'm going to look into, instead of just using the YouTube function, I'm going to look into like StreamYard and stuff like that, which I've heard really good things about. So we're moving forward with this format. So thank you very, very much for being here. Should be back to being consistent in the near future. Next week's going to be another one kind of like this, I think, a little bit later in the evening. So next week here in the United States is the Super Bowl. My family has a tradition around this. My aunt throws a big party. We all go down, whether we care about the individual game or not. We go, we have good food, we have fun. I'm smoking a brisket, which I haven't done before. I've been worried about that because it's not the cheapest thing of meat to buy, but I found a lot of people whose general advice was when you get consistently good at pulled pork and some and like ribs and a few other things, you really should be moving on to brisket and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to big up myself, but I'm pretty consistently good with pulled pork. I make decent ribs. I've for the last few years been smoking all the stuff for like big family meals. I've handled the turkey the last handful of Thanksgivings. And in fact, the last one we did, I brined overnight. And my reaction to having smoked turkey the first time was to retroactively be angry that every turkey I had wasn't as good as that because it was still like moist. Having brined a turkey overnight and handled that, gotta be honest. Yeah, that was the best turkey I've ever had. And I'm not, again, not trying to put myself over here. Plenty of other people can use similar techniques and do better than me. I'm just me. But man, there's a reason people do it. Just gonna put it like that. Um, so time for me to try a brisket, and we'll do that on again for a Super Bowl. And that means this might be again this time, maybe a little bit later. Sort of depends how the things wind down over there, but we'll sort that out. After that, things should be on a pretty regular schedule. So stay tuned. Thank you. Please, anything you can do to interact with the product, of course, is always appreciated. Live or after the fact, like, comment, subscribe, star rate, and written review. You all know the drill. Okay. That's it for me, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much again. Be back here next week to review UFC Fight Night 266 and preview. No, not preview. The UFC doesn't have something the 14th. What are you avoiding? You don't care about Valentine's, which I don't think is that week anyway. It's not a WWE event because they just had the Rumble. No preview. Okay. The UFC schedule it affects me, but I have zero control over it. 2 weeks. How is that next card looking? The 21st one, they're in Houston. What do we got there? Strickland and Hernandez. The build for that is oy vey, but not a bad fight. Spivak and Delia. Ige and Costa's a good fight. Michelle Pereira's washed. Zachary Reese, not great. Jacoby Smith and Xiaokun Ko. That's not a bad fight for prospects. Jordan Levitt and the fight fixer Yadier Del Valle. I'm kidding. He was not the one in that fight, but okay. No. Jaquani and Leal, maybe. Don't care about Soriano and Soriano. Punahele Soriano is usually at least watchable. Don't care about Phil Rowe. Don't really. Jeff Neal and Eros Medic. Someone's probably going to sleep in that fight. Okay, so that's okay. Main event's okay. There's some okay stuff there. Hopefully it holds together. So full preview of that, not next week, but in 2 weeks. So yeah, next week, just the review of Fight Night 266, and of course, whatever news happens to come up. So see you all then. Until then, as always, thank you very much for tuning in. Stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave. I'm out.